to the Menorah podcast. This is episode number 62. We're going to continue our conversation with Pastor Brady on his time away from us and some of the things that the Lord maybe showed him. And we'll get right into it. Pastor, good to have you back again.
Glad to be back. The time everybody's hearing this, I'm currently on vacation. First vacation since my sabbatical. Before anybody freaks out, this vacation was planned way before the sabbatical with some of our friends. We do this trip every year. Sam and Reagan love them. Shout out to them. Anyway, so enjoying that. Of course, we're recording this beforehand. But yeah, I'm glad to be back and hope everybody really enjoyed last week's episode. It felt really refreshing to be able to talk a little bit about the sabbatical, kind of give an overview of it. I'm excited to hear what you have to ask me today.
Well, I've been thinking some of the things, there's so much that comes to mind. And one of the things that I think came to mind first is, what do you think God has taught you?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's one thing God has taught me is you're never too good to not struggle. I think, and as I said in last week's episode, I'm trying to be as vulnerable as I can be. When I was going through that, and I have heard this from people my whole life, I've read many books, all that stuff. There are some people that are just really, really good to where you think they don't struggle. And in my mind, I had gotten to that point. I could deliver a exegetical homily. I'm not going to call it a sermon. There at the end, they weren't sermons. They were exegetical homilies, just trying to hang on. I could smile and do a podcast with you and make it seem like everything was okay. But I had gotten to the point where there were certain people that I knew that were perceptive and discerning people who had similar personalities as me, that if I was close to them, I knew they would figure out something was going on. And so in my mind, I isolated myself from those individuals. One that immediately comes to my mind is Dwayne Johnson. He's not the only one, but he's one. We're wired very similarly. We have very similar upbringings. We're very close. But when I knew that I was in the danger zone as far as burnout goes, I told myself, do not hang out with Dwayne because Dwayne will figure it out. Uh-huh. And so I did disassociate myself a little bit from him. And, of course, when I needed him, he was there like a great friend, even when I wasn't a good friend. And I think one thing God taught me was this. Number one, you're not Superman. Number two, you need other people around you. And I think that was really big for me. And that's something coming back. I've been a lot more, I think, being willing to say, hey, I need some help. And hey, I'm going to take a half day tomorrow, and I'm not going to feel bad about it. Stuff like that. And I think that's been good. And what folks don't know is I do try to meet regularly with some of you guys, meet around the table. And you guys ask me for about an hour and a half, how you doing? Tell us the truth. And a little accountability. And I think that's kind of has been a big game changer for me. So those are a few of the things God taught me. And I think another thing God has taught me is that I am dispensable. Steve did a great job leading while I was gone, and if it wasn't Steve, God would have brought somebody else. God is not going to let his church, as long as his church is biblically following his ways, he's not going to let his church fall. Uh-huh. And so God taught me, hey, they don't need you. They don't need you. I mean, I would love to have you back there, but they don't need you. I can use somebody else there. And so I think that kind of taught me, like, hey, I'm not Superman. I'm not all that. And I think that really taught me a lot. And prior to going through this sabbatical, I would always, anytime I was at the association, anytime I was at any kind of leadership event, because I serve on all kind of boards and all kind of stuff, over the last year, it had kind of become the thing to where whenever a chairperson had to be elected, I was usually the person to be elected, even though I was always the youngest person. I was usually, and I'm talking outside the church, I was usually always that person. So I had learned in my head that people outside the church had viewed me as a leader. Obviously, in the church, you're the pastor, you're the leader. But outside the church, other pastors had trusted in me to be chairmen of different boards and chairmen of committees as the youngest and most inexperienced person. And so I started to learn and realize, I started to think, well, I've got this. And man, that's the thing. I want to tell people, the minute you think you got it, God's going to tell you don't. And for me, that's when the wheels started to come off. Is when I started to think, oh yeah, man, I walk into any room and I'll do what I got to do, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. So God's taught me a lot in that, and of course I've repented of some of that cockiness, and I've repented of that pride. But man, it's a daily thing. It's a daily thing. Staying to the cross and spending time with God every day.
Well, a couple of observations. It's hard. One of the hardest things is, and I've been in a place in this congregation for many years where I've been involved in a lot of things, and some of those things are benevolent in nature, and you see a request come through, and it's like, what's going on with these guys? And I go to them, I was like, hey, what's up with this? And it's like, well, we really didn't want to ask. This is embarrassing. This is,
Yeah,
asking for help is one of the hardest things to do.
sure is.
But oftentimes, they are people that are more than willing to assist, no matter what it is, whether it's just listening. Oftentimes when you're in a tough situation, if you have somebody you can call up and say, "Hey, I just need to run some stuff by you. This is going on. How do you feel? How do you think I can best work through this? Or what do you think I should do?" It's not that you are specifically looking for a solution. It's just, maybe you need validation for something that's already come to mind.
Yeah.
The other thing is, the other observation is just the vulnerability. That is a hard thing to really let go of and say, hey, this is me. I'm sorry, it ain't what it looks like or what
Yep.
it looked like originally, but
Yep.
this is what I am.
Yeah, and I think I've been so much better for it. And I think one of the best people in my life who has taught me that it's okay to not be okay is my dad. My dad went through addiction and all kind of different things, and obviously his situation is a little bit different than mine. But my dad wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, and vulnerable in order to help people. So that's kind of where I'm at. I want to help people, other pastors, and that's the thing I have found. One reason burnout is so big among pastors is because pastors are expected not to fail. A lot of the times we expect the CEOs to have problems. We expect different vocations, but pastors, nah, they're supposed to be up there. And last week I mentioned my podcast, or on the podcast, that I was 100% at fault for my own actions, and I created this situation. And yes, that statement is entirely true, but at the same time, I do think, and I don't mean this as a slight against our church, because I think it would be the same anywhere. When you're in your 20s and you start out with 70 to 80 people, and within 2 to 3 years you've got 280 people, the pressure skyrockets. And you can't understand it until you do it. Even somebody who has, and I've had conversations with guys, even guys who have pastored for 40 years but have never experienced, and I'm not taking the church growth for granted, trust me, but guys who have never experienced that kind of 200%, 220% type of church growth, it's hard enough to deal with that when you're older and have 30 years of experience. Try doing that when you're still trying to figure out who you are and you're still a newlywed. I think that's a whole nother ball game to this that doesn't really, and that's the other thing. That's one reason that I got in a spot where I felt like I couldn't get help, not from, the church aspect, but one reason, because I had reached out to some organizations for help within our Southern Baptist life. And I'm not naming those organizations, but I had reached out. And I think the number one thing that I found was it was almost like I had the plague. And what I mean by that is, okay, you're 20, at the time I was 25, you're 25, you're pastoring a church that is in the top 15% attendance wise in the United States. That might surprise people. But what we run on Sunday mornings is in the top 15 percentile of attendance in the United States because the average church size attendance on Sunday morning is 72. And so when you do that and it's like, well, I don't really want to help this guy. And I hate to say it like this, I really do, but I think it needs to be said. I want to help this guy, but he's old enough to be my son or my grandson. He's pastoring a church larger than I ever have, and he's already finishing seminary with aspirations to get a PhD. Why would I help this guy? And I hate to say that, but that is how I felt. I felt that I had the plague just because I was in a different spot than those individuals. And that's where pride and Satan and jealousy get into the minds of others and make this situation even worse. Is to where people are more reluctant to help me because, well, he should fall. He's too young to be pastoring. He's too young to, and I'm just being frank and honest because I do think that plays a part in it. And I know there are going to be people that hear this and say, no, that's not true. Until you're in that spot, you cannot say that's not true.
And we don't ever know how we would react
Exactly.
until we are actually presented with that.
And so I think, you bring up a good point. I think that God has allowed this to happen to me so that when Hannah and I if God allows us to be old and there's a young couple, we will actually have the wisdom and opportunity to say, yep, we did that. We were 21 and 19 or however old we were. I think that is going to give us the opportunity to witness to a group of people. To be quite frank, we haven't had to other outside of our church. The people inside of our church have ministered to us more than the people outside, meaning Southern Baptist organizations.
Right.
And I'm not hating on Southern Baptist organizations. I'm not going to stop being Southern Baptist, none of that. But we got to do better. I think we got to do better, and that's on my heart. If somebody says they're hurting, we got to get over the stigma of pastors hurting. We got to get over that, and I'm talking to pastors here. The church members at First Baptist Church of Gaston, there is no stigma with hurting. Here's a hug. Here's love. We have had people offer all kind of things if we need it and have walked with us. But when is that going to start happening with other pastors helping other pastors? When can we get past the whole, well, your church is bigger than mine, yada, yada, yada. I don't care if your church is bigger than mine. If you're hurting, I'm going to help you. Or your salary package is bigger than mine. I don't care. None of that is in my head. So we got to get that out.
Well, a lot of times when you're in those situations, you really find out how insignificant your salary package is.
Oh yeah, it
how
doesn't matter.
insignificant your rank is, and you're almost at a point of desperation, and that's what I felt on that Tuesday morning was a point of desperation, and I think that far too long we have overlooked the mental aspect of a lot of things. I mean, we're specifically talking in terms of pastors now, but a lot of different industries are finding that dealing with the mental aspect of things on the back end has not really worked that well. I think, we could probably do better by planning for some of that sometimes and making arrangements ahead of time and being prepared to deal with it. I don't know how that looks. I guess I'm not a person that is gifted in that area, but I think that some folks could probably develop pretty easy a package for dealing with stuff like that.
And I think for me, you need to have outside help because over the years, and I'm not, every church is like this, over the years I've had people that have been difficult people. I've been a difficult person, I know that. It's just people doing people. And so there have been times in my ministry here where there have been stressful seasons. And you need to reach out to those organizations. But at the same time, it's just hard when you feel like you're marked because you're doing something that is so unprecedented in Southern Baptist life. You don't see 20-year-olds pastor medium-sized churches. Okay, well, you also don't see little shepherd boys killing giants. Okay, talking about David killing
Hmm.
Goliath. So we as a convention we don't need, we have to get out of CEO corporate America mindset.
Hmm.
And I'm tired of that.
Yeah, that's a shift that I think a lot of people are now paralleling churches to as pastors being the CEOs, and I think existing to an extent forces a church into a business-like organization,
It
and
can.
to explain that is a lot of things that a lot of people, a lot of entities that we deal with as a church, the power company, the phone company, all these things that are required, treat us as a business. They expect us to follow their rules. It's like those little things that when you download a new app on your phone and you go through all this stuff, and when you use those apps, somewhere in there is just pages and pages and pages of legal
Oh, yeah.
stuff that basically says if you load this and you use this, you agree to this.
Hmm.
I can guarantee you there's probably not two people that I know that's ever read more than two or three sentences in that whole document.
Would it shock you if I told you I've read those
It
before?
would not surprise me in the least.
Yeah, I'm
I,
one of those people.
well, let me tell you, I was one of those. I was really curious. I was like, what's all this about?
Yeah,
So I started, and I have to be honest with you. About 30 minutes into it, I'm like, oh my gosh.
yeah. This
I,
this is brutal.
it says
Yeah,
the same thing over, and I'm sure they're written ambiguous to kind of cloud matters. But
yeah.
I'd like to ask you one thing. Looking forward
Hmm.
in your life, what would be your one word of advice? You had the chance to be that person that somebody comes to and says, "Hey, man, I'm struggling." What would be the one thing you would give them?
Yeah, if I had a pastor or a person, either one, man, one piece of advice. It's okay to not be okay. I would encourage them and here's the hard thing is that I know a lot of guys don't have a loving church like I do. So the advice is not necessarily one size fits all. There are some guys, when they burn out, the church is so happy because they want to get rid of them. That wasn't the case here. I think it's a very healthy, loving pastor member relationship. And if you're listening to this and you don't feel that way, well, you sure do have me fooled. Because I think I love you, you love me, and we're a happy family. But to tell them it's okay, but also to tell them it's okay and not be okay, tell them to be vulnerable in front of their congregation, what they're feeling, what they're going through, but at the same time, give their congregation an opportunity to help them. If their congregation chooses not to grant a sabbatical or chooses not to do what you guys have done here, well, that's on them. And guess what? God will fight for you. You have only to be silent, and that might be time for you to move on. But you got to give them the opportunity. In other words, don't just, instead of not taking a sabbatical, don't just resign and say, well, they don't love me, they don't care. Give them the opportunity to serve you, give them the opportunity to take care of you, give you sabbatical, and love you through your burnout. And if they choose not to do it, the blood's on their hands. But don't just assume how they're going to respond because I had no idea what kind of support I was going to get. And since I've been back, it's been nothing but, brother, lean on me. Let me help you. Just a totally different dynamic than maybe what it was before.
Yeah, I agree. I have seen a change, a shift in our congregation, and I think it's a shift for the better. You and I have talked before about how different our congregation is now than it was 10 years ago,
Even
even
4 years,
5 years
yeah,
ago.
even 4 years ago, yeah.
And it's not, all that's not either good or bad. It's just different. And that's okay. It's okay to be different as well. I think that one of the things that really surprised me was how well the congregation, the people. I'm one of those folks in our church that usually people aren't inhibited from telling me what's on their heart, and I appreciate that. I really do. I don't take that for granted.
And you shouldn't. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and I think that our people, for the most part, were really sympathetic and very concerned.
I
I
think
I
so.
think that's is a good way. The best way to say that is concern. But I just want to, from my heart, I'm glad to have you back. I enjoy doing things with you. The time we spend doing video and media and just kind of brainstorming on all of that. It's my area of comfort, I guess, and it's good to have somebody, particularly a pastor, that kind of is in tune with me on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's my thing. I mean, if I weren't pastoring, I'd probably be, honestly, in some form of media, whether I mean, most people say I have the face for radio, so maybe that'd be radio. I don't know. Maybe that'd be TV. I don't know. But speaking and,
You
and
clean up pretty good.
communication's my thing. And so, just like Hannah, she's in communications field, and that's where I would probably be as well. That's where she and I bond on. We love communications, advertising, marketing. I mean, we're the kind of couple. We tried out the new Whataburger in Lexington a few weeks ago. Just opened up. We went and we couldn't really focus on the food because we were focused on all the advertising and they had like inflatable stuff and we were looking at all that and we're thinking, how could we adopt this? How could we do this or how could we do that? With our organization, the church, and it's like all of a sudden, oh yeah, how's the food? Because I guess our children are going to be doomed with always having to worry about logos and stuff. But anyway, yeah, man, I appreciate you having me back on and can't wait to see what we'll come up with for next week. But let me go ahead and take us out. Like I said, if you haven't already, subscribe to us on Buzzsprout, Amazon, subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. By the way, while I was on sabbatical, we hit 300 subscribers on YouTube. So
Wow, great
that's
deal.
awesome. So that's huge, 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 huge. So anyway, so thank you for listening to the Menorah Podcast. This is the podcast that shares light, speaks light, and sends the light of Jesus Christ all across the airways of the internet. This has been episode 62, and we hope to see you this coming Sunday.